Team Fortress 2 is a free-to-play class-based first-person shooter game developed by Valve Software, the company behind Steam, CSGO, and the Half-Life franchise. Team Fortress was originally a mod for Quake, but it's developed a lot since then and become an absolute staple in gaming. The game is long past its peak, but it still averages around 50,000 players every single day. The game has a long history dating back to 1998, with many different versions and iterations that look completely different to the game we have today. So let's take a deep dive into this game and the lost media surrounding it. You might have noticed that Team Fortress 2 has the number 2 in the name. And that's because the original Team Fortress was a mod for a game called Quake. This mod released in 1996, but I'm not gonna get into Team Fortress 1 because its development is not really related to the second game. Team Fortress 2 began development in 1998, and it was originally called Valve's Team Fortress. It was planned to be a realistic shooter with large maps and usable vehicles. According to Robin Walkers, an employee at Valve, the game was originally planned to have 8 classes. These classes are similar to the ones we have today except for the Pyro class, which was for some reason removed. And in 1999, the game was renamed to Team Fortress 2 Brotherhood of Arms. It was around E3 of 1999 when the game was renamed. This rename brought some changes with it. The game kept the same ideas and concepts as in the 1998 versions, but with the plans of new maps that held unique objectives, and adding additional weapons like the smoke and spider grenades, and reintroducing the Pyro class. They also added some new classes like the Ranger, Machine Gunner, and the Instructor, but these were later removed. Here is a screenshot from TF2 Brotherhood of Arms, and as you can see, it's very different from the TF2 that we have today. This version of the game also saw the existing classes getting some pretty major differences. The Rocket Infantry is similar to the Soldier class that we have today, but with a jetpack on his back instead of having the ability to rocket jump. The Sniper class has the ability to go completely invisible for 20 seconds, and the Light Infantry class, which is most similar to the Scout class, had a light machine gun instead of his usual scatter gun. The game unfortunately ended up being scrapped later on in its development, but some of its functionality and mechanics, as well as textures and level design, were reused in another game called Team Fortress Classic, which is actually still available on Steam and released in 1999. Unfortunately, almost every build from this era is completely lost. Around 2003, development for another game called Team Fortress 2 Invasion began. Unlike the attempt before, Invasion would take a less realistic approach and instead go for a steampunk and sci-fi design, with the main idea for the matches being a war between humans and aliens. The only reason we know of this game's existence is because of a build that leaked in 2003. In this game, the average round would consist of 15-minute intervals called acts, featuring 2 teams, aliens and humans, fighting against each other, with the aliens being the attackers and the humans being the defenders. To win, each team had to control territories known as control zones, and the team with the most control zones by the end of the round wins. The idea was later completely scrapped, and the source code of the build was found within the infamous 2003 leak. On October 7th, 2003, a 21-year-old German computer hacker named Axel Gemby exploited vulnerabilities within Valve's internal network, gaining access to their servers and a lot of their in-development game files. The leaks included Half-Life 2 source code a year before its release, and early builds of Counter-Strike Source and Team Fortress 2 Invasion. So yeah, it was a pretty hefty leak. But unfortunately, despite this leak, almost every single version from this era remains completely lost. After years of waiting, Valve finally announced Team Fortress 2 in 2006, alongside the Orange Box. In July of 2006, EA and Valve held a conference, revealing the final design of the game with 2 trailers. These trailers had beta footage of the game, including some early designs of the classes. Most of the ideas from Brotherhood and Invasion were scrapped entirely. It's still not known why they decided to completely turn this game around from its old art style, but it was likely that the gameplay was too complex. despite the overall art direction being decided, a lot of the designs and items used for the classes were changed or completely removed before the release of the game. An example of this is the Heavy model. He originally didn't have any gloves, but in the final version of the game, he's seen wearing them. And the Scout was supposed to use an SMG instead of a scattergun. The Spy also carried a tranquilizer gun instead of a revolver, and had a questionable armband on his left arm. There was also a feature where each class was allowed to use a specific grenade, which funnily enough reminds me of Fortnite's ballistic mode, where each person can choose what type of grenade they want before the match starts. But this feature was ultimately removed before the game launched. Unfortunately, there are no found builds from the 2005 to 2006 era of the game's development. Expiration Date is a short movie created by Valve for the TF2 franchise. Valve had a trend of creating these short movies to promote their game, and these probably inspired the short animated movies that Overwatch ended up making to promote their game as well, since Overwatch takes a lot of inspiration from TF2. Sometime in the early 2010s, Expiration Date started being conceptualized, with employees at Valve working on a screenplay. Later on in 2012, Adult Swim pitched to Valve an animated series about each class that would last around 15 minutes per episode. Adult Swim gave Valve a deadline of around 2013 to finish producing the pilot episode. Valve failed to meet this deadline and later ended up submitting a 20-minute cut of the pilot episode, which was longer than their limit of 15 minutes. They submitted it in 2013, but it was rejected and later ended up getting shortened. In late 2013, Valve submitted a rough cut of the pilot to Adult Swim, but it didn't meet the expectations and guidelines that Adult Swim wanted. And by May 2014, Adult Swim wanted 12 episodes to be produced. However, Valve was still working on the first pilot episode, and after this, Adult Swim canceled the production and pulled the plug on the series. But Valve still had plans for these animated movies, and despite the cancellation of the series, the pilot episode was finished and it was released on the Team Fortress 2 YouTube channel under the title of Expiration Date. The rest of the unfinished episodes are all lost and we really don't know where they went, but the version currently on YouTube is 15 minutes long. And as I said earlier, at one point in time there was a 20-minute version, and this extended cut has yet to be released. We know of several deleted scenes that did exist in the extended cut, and we actually do have some still images from these deleted scenes, like the ones you're seeing on screen right now. Minor correction, some footage was actually found, and it was from an animation reel by Matthew Russell, who worked on these animations. Now, some of these are just in progress versions of animations already in Expiration Date, but there are a couple of deleted scenes that didn't make it in the final cut. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I just thought I'd share. I hope you enjoyed this look at TF2's Lost Media, and to be honest, I'm pretty shocked that the history of this game goes back almost 30 years. So let me know what you guys think of this video in the comments down below, and what would you like me to cover next. See ya!